All right, welcome to Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chapp. Today, we're going to be talking about the Detroit Lions defensive line. This is on the heels of the Detroit Lions defensive line being ranked 10th in the NFL by Pro Football Focus. And Pro Football Focus, when they gave their rationale, they gave you that Derrick Moore could potentially become a player that could help out Aidan Hutchinson on the other side. I think they got it a little bit wrong in their analysis. Let me explain just to give you a little glimpse of it. Last year, what we saw from the Detroit Lions defensive line in terms of what Roy Lopez was able to do, in terms of what Al-Quadin Muhammad was able to do with his sacks, in terms of what they were able to do as a defensive line, it wasn't good enough. And when you think about Al-Quadin Muhammad, you go, okay, he had over 10 sacks. He was on the field 35% of the time. And then you look at it from the perspective of the offense, okay? The offense for any team that was playing Detroit, when they saw Tyler Lacy in there as the big defensive end, don't you dare think that they were like, okay, let's do an option here to where we can kind of get him on the edge and make him think. Let's do some delays, some draws to kind of like delay them from getting upfield, especially a guy like Tyler Lacy, who's a bigger guy. He's not a speed rusher like Al-Quadin Muhammad or Aidan Hutchinson. It's going to take him a little bit of a while to get there, and that's all they need to really make that play work. So when we think about the Detroit Lions defensive line, we've talked about on this podcast for the last 2 years. Hutchinson's usage rate. Last year, he played 91% of snaps or somewhere close to there, 91%, or I think it was 88%. Max Crosby was right there too. And then you have to go 4 points slower to get to Myles Garrett, 3 points slower to get to Will Anderson, and then you start tumbling down. From TJ Watt was at like 77%. And this just shows you when you're a defensive end, like a Hutchinson, you can't play 100% of the snaps. It's just not possible, especially with the amount of exertion that you're trying to get to the quarterback. Your energy levels don't stay the same. I mean, anybody who says that Hutchinson could play all 100% of the snaps or 90% of snaps is just fooling themselves. I mean, it's just common sense. There's a reason that there was like guys like Garrett who's at 86, right? But then you go TJ Watt 77. I mean, Al-Quadin Muhammad at 35% last year. Just keep that in perspective. That's where I think Detroit's defensive line is really going to surprise people, because I look at what Ahmed Hassanein did in the first preseason game, and take it with a grain of salt. But Ahmed Hassanein sacking Joe Burrow on the first drive of the game really gave me a little bit of a glimpse of what he can do. And I feel like if there's a 4-man rotation of Hutch, Wonnum, Derrick Moore, Tyler Lacy, they have a really good rotation. Obviously, they like the big end role, and however the heck they use the fourth defensive end, like if they're using like if Hutch is 1, Wonnum's 2, Moore's 3, Hassaneen's 4, and then you have a fifth like as a kind of like a flex, whether it's Onzarike, whether it's Skylar Gil-Howard as a big end, or whether it's Tyler Lacy. I think that they have more depth this year than they've had in years past. I think that's what's separating last year's defensive line from this year's defensive line. And I think you have to look to the interior as well, because when you look at the interior of the Detroit Lions defensive line, Alim McNeill coming back off the injury is great, because last year when he got to week 7 and he came off IR and he just didn't look the same. After 2 weeks, he looked like he was gassed, and it looked like he was trying to favor his leg. And even Dan Campbell spoke about how he was trying to favor, he was trying to protect himself or something. It's normal after an injury, and that's something we can expect with Brian Branch when he comes back. Hopefully, he gets a little bit up to speed more quickly. But with McNeill, who's a big boy, it's not the same. So I look at Alim McNeill coming back off injury. I think he could be excellent. I look at a guy like Skylar Gil-Howard, who they drafted in the 6th round, and what he did in the first preseason game, making a complete impression on the coaches with the chase of Josh Johnson. That was fantastic, and that just shows you that he has some speed to him. You look at Tyreek Williams going into year 2. You look at some of these guys that are, you know, they're on the roster bubble and they can go play somewhere else. I mean, like Mekhi Wingo, you look at Levi Onwuzurike. There's a lot to like about this defensive line. And I think what's going to be the most impressive about this defensive line, and when Pro Football Focus ranked them 10th, I thought that was fair. Now, when we did the grades, we graded the defensive end room a 78 because of the depth. Because I wasn't willing to say Ahmed Hassanein was going to be great. Okay. I had to see him in training camp, but I'm willing to put the depth up another 3 points. So that's going to push the grade up a bunch. When I looked at the defensive tackles, I said, okay, 81, right? I thought the depth was there. I thought the future and upside was there. I thought the scheme and fit and coaching was there. And I think when you look at this team in terms of what they're able to accomplish with this Detroit Lions team, when we think about Hutchinson and we think about this defense and how they need to get after the passer, I felt like last year was a great step in the right direction in terms of rushing the passer. I think where it skewed in terms of going to the wrong way was when you had a defensive end like Al-Quadin Muhammad only taking, I think, 35 to 38% of snaps, which when you're an offense, you're looking for him. You're looking for Al-Quadin Muhammad because Hutchinson's on the other side, and the person opposite of Hutch, the bare minimum of what they should get is 8.5, 10 sacks, bare minimum. Because when you're playing, across from a guy like Hutchinson, you should be getting single blocks, especially with a guy like Tyreek Williams and Alim McNeill in the middle. So last year, what we saw with the defensive line in terms of the way they got better rushing the passer, but they were a little bit, I thought, unprepared for the moment in terms of when teams saw Al-Quadin Muhammad was off the field and they saw Tyler Lacy was on the field. And they said, okay, we're gonna check. We're gonna check into a delay, or we're gonna check into a draw, or we're gonna, check into a screen. Go into that side, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to, just give them enough time so where they can get the ball out and it's a clear pass. Because they know when Tyler Lacy's out there, they're gonna have a little more time. And I think that's the most important thing about this defensive line, because when we look at Alim McNeill, he should be healthy. He should be ready and rocking. That's a guy that goes up the middle. Tyreek Williams in year 2, what is he going to do? What is he going to be in year 2? Is how much better is he going to be as a pass rusher? And then you look at, we don't have any questions about Hutch. The only questions about Hutch is, can you give this guy a break? And I look at the 3 defensive ends outside of Hutch, Hassaneen, Moore, Wonnum, and I think you can give him a break. And then whoever wins that edge 2 spot on the defense, and let me just tell you, if Hassaneen wins that big edge rusher, that would help out a lot. Because I don't think the offenses are going to, come into a game and say, okay, Hassaneen's out there. It's not Tyler Lacy anymore. We got to kind of let's just run it, okay? We're not going to change the pass. We're not going to change to a draw. We're not going to change to a delay. He's pretty fast too. Or when Derrick Moore is out there, they're not going to change it. The problem with the Detroit Lions last year wasn't that their defensive line was not good. It was that they were too easy to scheme against. Tyler Lacy is a great player. He's a good player, and he fills a role, but he cannot be out there for more pass, snaps than Al-Quadin Muhammad. This year, in terms of the Detroit Lions, you have Derrick Moore, DJ Wonnum, and Hassaneen, and you have Peyton Turner, who I don't think he's going to make the team. We'll see about that. But you have guys. You have 4 defensive ends that you could really count on right now. Now it's whether the question remains, and Pro Football Focus laid this out. If Derrick Moore develops, that could be really good. But I'm coming at it from a different angle. If they can have the depth of the 4-man defensive end, and they can keep Hutch a little more fresh, and they can keep McNeill a little more fresh with, maybe they put in maybe, they keep McNeill fresh and they keep Williams fresh, that would be fantastic. That would be fantastic. That's what you've been missing this whole entire time. When you look at the best teams and the Super Bowl teams, they don't have like you looked at the Eagles a couple years ago. Yes, they had Josh Sweat, but they also had a depth where they were just coming at you. When one went out because he was gassed, the next one comes in full tilt, and that's the problem the Detroit Lions had the last couple years. Especially last year with Elko D. Muhammad. He only played 35% of snaps. He was not good in the run game. They couldn't trust him in the run game. So when it came time for a rush down, he was off the field, and on passing downs, he would come back on. And it just shows you just right there by the snap percentage that Detroit was a little too easy to play against. They're a little too easy to scheme against. And when you have coaches, you have when you have quarterbacks on the roster, it's the schedule this year, like Josh Allen, like Bryce Young, like Jordan Love, like Kyler Murray, Drake May, Baker, Caleb, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart. If you were like you were last year, you would be a lot easier to play against. And that's what I'm most impressed about with this Detroit Lions defensive line. And I think they're going to be a surprising unit. I truly think this Detroit Lions defensive line is going to really keep people surprised. I think they're going to be really surprised when they see the Detroit Lions defensive line in week 1 against the Saints. And just based off what we hear from practice, based off what we hear from training camp, like it seems like there's 4 guys that could be your stable 4. If you can get a 5th or a 6th, that'd be great. But what you're trying to do is the depth of the position and make sure that you're harder to play against this year than you were last year, where you were very easy to play against. So that is it, and that is all. Thank you for watching the Detroit Lions News Podcast. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and we'll see you guys next time as we talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. As always, subscribe, like, comment below what you think the Detroit Lions defensive line could potentially be this year, and we'll talk about it in the comments. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.